let's start with the day 2, second lecture. So if yesterday we talked about from where does the water in Uzbekistan come and where it goes, we discussed about the infamous case of RLC, we looked at Google Earth Pro and tried to track the water and see where it goes and so on. And you also tried to talk about the history of some of the water bodies in Uzbekistan using Google Earth Pro. I really hope you liked the process. So if yesterday we talked about the origins of water, then today we're going to talk about where do we spend this water and how do we spend it, for what do we spend it. Yes. So basically the name is consumption, tracking every drop. How do we spend it? How do we spend the water? So basically in Uzbekistan we have quite a lot of water, in fact, and how do we spend it is basically more than 90% or around 90% of water is spent on agriculture. Yes, it's very huge, it's quite a lot with respect to other countries, but this is the state of Uzbekistan. Mostly all the water goes for agriculture. And then the second biggest user is we, the people. Around 5.1% goes to people, like it's very small percentage. And that's why I like when we post about how people are saving the water at home. It's also very, very, very important, but you do understand that our contribution will be very small because already 90% of water is being spent by agriculture, and if we want a real change to be done in the water sector, then this change should be first done in the sector of agriculture. Then after people, the third biggest user is industry. By industry I mean all industry, those who produce chemicals, those who produce products, those who produce heat, energy, electricity. These all use 1.5% of Uzbekistan's water. And then we have fisheries, we have energy, and then we also have other places that also use the water. But basically this is the state of Uzbekistan. We mostly use it for agriculture. So if agriculture is the biggest user, how is the water in agriculture is being used? So basically in Uzbekistan we have around 4.3 million hectares of land, and around 40% of this land is being irrigated in the most traditional way, which is just flooding. This is the least water saving way. For example, here in this picture you can see how the flooding looks like. So they basically give the shape to the ground in this way and just let the water pass. This is so inefficient. First of all, it's inefficient in terms of water usage, because in fact we need very little amount of this water. All the rest of the water just goes into the earth, into the ground, and is not used by us. This is inefficient in terms of water, first of all. Secondly, it's inefficient in terms of the I'll tell you now. These agricultural nutritions that we give to plants. There is a fixed amount of agricultural nutritions that plants need, and we give it like manually. In Uzbek we call it orot, right? We give it manually. But when we let so much of water to pass through the fields, a portion of that agricultural nutrition is being washed away by the water. So which means we pay for that nutrition to go to the roots of plants, but that nutrition doesn't go because it's washed away by the water. And the third downside of this technique is that washed nutritions, after they are washed, they end up in rivers or they end up in the groundwater sources by polluting it, because the nutrition that is good for plants is not good for people. That's why it's also very bad. And the fourth reason why it's bad is that, in fact, if you know, like around, I don't know, 1,000 years ago, on the place of Uzbekistan, we had very, very ancient ocean. So right now, in fact, we're living on the bottom of very ancient ocean. But then it disappeared. Yes, it disappeared, and right now it's a dry place. But it used to be a huge ocean here. And what happens when a huge body of water disappears is that in its place a huge amount of salt is left. That's why the lands of Uzbekistan and Central Asia are pretty salty, because it used to be ocean here. It used to be a lot of ocean here. Yes, and right now, like it used to be like this, that salt was trapped inside of the earth. But when we flood the earth, the water goes down to the earth, and it starts to wash away that salt that was kept by the earth. And then when it starts to wash away the salt becomes mobile. It can move. And by capillary action, salt starts to move to the upper layers of earth by making it more and more and more salty. And as the result, in order to get rid of that salt that we created ourselves, we have to wash the land more and more, and we have to spend more water. We spend more water, that more water seeps to the ground, and then it lets more salt to go up, and then we have to spend even more water. And in that way, we get into the trap. When we spend a lot of water, this creates a lot of salt on the upper layer of earth. Then we have to spend a lot of water in order to wash that salt, but then that a lot of water brings even more salt, and then this is this vicious circle, and we can't get out of it, but we have to. And that's why this is not a good way. This is not a good way, but this is the cheapest way in terms of infrastructure, meaning you don't need nothing for it, right? You just need to dig the ground in a certain way. You do not need any equipment. This is the cheapest in terms of infrastructure, but not water. It's very water inefficient. So the second biggest way we spend our water is laser land leveling. So what is this fancy term in this laser land leveling? So basically, you can see here, what is it? So with laser land leveling means that we have this ground, we have this agricultural land, and using this machine, so you can see the yellowish thing here and yellowish thing here, what we do is that we gave very perfectly flat shape, very perfectly flat surface to the ground. Why does it have to be very flat? Because if it's not flat, if it's like this or like that, what happens is that when you let the water pass through the field, the water is being trapped in the place that is lower in the elevation, and it doesn't reach the plants that are located in the above place, right? And if we want the water to be evenly distributed throughout the whole field, we need that field to be perfectly flat. Yes. And that's why we do this laser land leveling. It's just a fancy way of calling that we will make the land perfectly flat. Yes, and we do it using this machine. It's very efficient way. It's not directly the way to use the water, but it's one of the ways we gave the shape to the land that will make the water to be used more efficiently. And then the third biggest way is drip irrigation. So I think drip irrigation is very popular, and you don't need much of explanation from my side. But basically, in drip irrigation, we just have these tubes, and these tubes have the hollow sides, and these holes will provide water to plants in certain rate. Meaning, we do not give too much of water to plants. We give exact amount of water that the plant needs, and then it's good both in terms of water usage and for the plant as well. But drip irrigation is not suitable for all kinds of soil, meaning there are some good soil where drip irrigation is good, But for most of the soil in Uzbekistan, which is salty, crusty, and needs a lot of washing, drip irrigation is not always the case. And that's why when someone asks, why doesn't Uzbekistan just let drip irrigation to exist all over its place? You can answer that we can't do that because most of the land of Uzbekistan is just not suitable for drip irrigation. Plants will not survive simply because our land, our ground, our soil is not suitable. Is not always suitable for drip irrigation. But it's not the case with all types, and that's why we still can use it. And then there are other techniques like sprinkling, and then there is another technique that also mimics rain. Yes, so these are other techniques. They are also more efficient than just the traditional way. They have their downside, their advantages and disadvantages, and just basically depending on what kind of case you have, what kind of soil you have, what kind of crop you have, and how accessible is water to you, you can choose one of the ways to use that water. But currently this is the situation that we have in Uzbekistan. Still not that good because 40% of traditional flooding is not very good. We should not do that. Yes. So, as I said, 90% of Uzbekistan water is being used for agriculture. Then 5.1% is being used by us, by people. How? So, every big city, every region that is located near to the water body, be it groundwater or surface water, they have two things. It's must. The first one is water treatment plant. What this water treatment plant does is it takes water from river or from groundwater, it treats that water, and then it distributes that water to people. That's it. And then the second thing is wastewater treatment plant. So what wastewater treatment plant does is after the clean water is being used by people to wash the dishes, to water the plants, to flush the toilet, that water becomes dirty, but it's still water and it's still a lot of water, a lot of dirty water. We cannot just let it go to the nature, right? It's too much, it's too dirty with human waste, with food waste. So we have to clean it, and one of the ways to clean it is using wastewater treatment plants. So this is a snapshot from Google Earth Pro. This is a snapshot of wastewater treatment plant in Tashkent. We're going to talk more about these structures in upcoming lectures. So, but for now, this is what we have. And basically, yes, the people, we use around 5.1% of Uzbekistan's water just in this way. We take it, we clean it, we consume it, and then after we make it dirty, we clean it afterwards and give it back to nature. Right now, so I might be wrong on the statistics, but I guess more than 80% of Uzbekistan's population right now has access to clean drinking water, and around more than 20% of Uzbekistan's population have access to wastewater treatment structures. Yes, so it's not that good, but still it's okay. It's way better than when we just started. Now, if we go to industry, so if you remember, industry uses around 1.5% of Uzbekistan's water. So what is it? So it can be industries that produce some chemicals like Navoy Azot or something else. They need pure water for their reactions, and mostly all industries use water in order to cool their structures because water has very good cooling capabilities, and industries, these plants, they tend to always get very heated, right? There's always some work and always they can get heated, and that's why they use the water in order to cool their structures, or vice versa. Some of the chemical reactions need very high temperature, that's why they use the water, they turn it into steam, and that steam can go up to 500, 600, 700 temperatures, and they use this steam in order to give heat to other parts in their plant. Yes, So if you become a chemical engineer, you will get a lot of knowledge in that area. Yeah. And also the also usually the plants that produce energy use a lot of water, because the water is basically one of the main ways they transfer energy from the plant to other units. Yes. So basically, uh, the water uh, can be used for many purposes. But what is the most efficient way to use the water? What are the sectors that can bring us the highest profit if we use the water for them? Right now, you see that most of Uzbekistan's water is being used by agriculture. But the question is it the most efficient way to use our water? Right? Because we have the resource and we have the right to ask the question where for which things to use that resource. Maybe if we would use our water only for industry, we could get more profit out of it rather than for agriculture. Or maybe if we would use most of our water for people, those people would become smarter, or I don't know, their life would become better, and then maybe we could have a better education with better access to water, and Uzbekistan would get better. We don't know, right? So how do we know? How do we know whether we're spending the water efficiently for that or this sector? So, in order to know this, there is a concept that is called water footprint. I'm sure you have heard about carbon footprint, right? So carbon footprint is a method, technique that calculates how much the process or a human being is spending is producing CO2 basically. For example, if you fly on a plane, then your carbon footprint is going to be several tons or several kilograms of CO2, right? The water footprint is the same thing. For example, for you to get more, for your intuition to get more close to what water footprint is, some of you, if you're living in urban places, in cities, your water footprint would be way higher. It's basically how much water you use. How much water you use. For example, I live in a city and my water footprint should be very high. I use water to flush the toilet. I use water while I wash the dishes. I use water during those long times when I take baths or something like this, right? So my water footprint is quite high. But I have nieces and nephews that live in villages and they don't flush the toilet. They basically have a hole dug in the ground where they go for that purpose, right? So they don't have a conventional toilet, so they don't use water to flush the toilet. They wash the dishes, but they use very minimal amount of water, and also when they bath, it's usually very quick. It takes very little amount of water, so their water footprint is very low. Yes. So, but is for people. But this is for people. Depending on your lifestyle, your water footprint is either very high or either very low. And not only depending on your lifestyle, but also how smart your house is. At times, you can live with the same comfort, but if your house is equipped with some smart water technologies, then you usually use less amount of water. For example, right now when you flush the toilet, you use pure drinking water in order to flush the toilet. But what you could do, some countries have the system where the water that you use for the bathing is being cleaned a little bit, and then it's diverted to your toilet, so that you wouldn't use clean drinking water when you flush it, but you would use a little bit treated bathing wastewater to flush your toilet. And then you still have that comfort, but you spend less water, right? Or in many countries, people don't wash the dishes by hand. They use dishwasher machines. And surprisingly, dishwashing machines use way less water to wash the dishes than people do. Yes. So next time, tell to your mom to buy a dishwashing machine, not to escape from dishwashing, right? Although this could be a reason too, but in order to save water, right? It's a good excuse, anyways. So, however, right now I talked about water footprint of people, but there are water footprints of products as well. So I'm sure you've heard about that. For example, in order to produce your phone, around 10,000 liters of water was used, or in order to, I don't know, in order to make a paper, right? A paper, around 5,000 liters have been used, or in order to raise this tangerines, around 4,000 liters was used in order to raise 1 kilo of this fruit, so on and so forth. How was this thing calculated? So let's dive more into it. How do we calculate this water footprint? So basically, when we calculate the water footprint, we use three waters. So we have green water footprint, we have blue water footprint, and we have gray water footprint. So there is a lot of text here, and whenever you want to come back and to read it better, you can come and back and read. Or if you need it for your research, I put it here, but I'm not going to read it aloud. Otherwise, I asked Gemini to create me a very nice image of it. So basically, blue water is the most intuitive thing. For example, let's imagine the cotton, right? And let's try to calculate the water footprint of cotton. So how would we do? We would think of how much water do we spend in order to produce a kilo of cotton. First of all, we spend water in order to irrigate the land. We water the cotton plant, right? So that is blue water. That is that actual water that has been spent in order to give the nutrition to the plant, right? To the cotton. So this is blue water, the actual water that we spend. Then there is this green water. The green water is the water that has been trapped in the soil by after it rained, or from groundwater, or the natural resource of the soil. We didn't give it. It existed by itself, but also was taken by the plant. This is green water. And then there is for cotton, it would be the water that is in the soil after the rain, or it was there by itself, by nature, right? And the third type of water is gray water. So what do we mean by gray water? Is that after any process, we produce water which is polluted, right? And we treat that water, but we can't treat it to a very good extent. And that's why what we usually do, we take a lot of pure water and we add a little bit of our a little bit clean but still dirty water, and then that dirty water gets diluted by the good water, and overall we still have pretty good water, because the dirty water was diluted by the big amount of good water. So gray water is basically the amount of water that is needed in order to dilute the polluted water to the extent that is still healthy and good for environment and people. So for the example of cotton, it would be, as I told you, in order to raise the plants, we use a lot of agriculture nutritions, right? So and also we use pesticides, right? Because we have some bugs and some illnesses that are specific to plants, and we have pesticides in order to get rid the plants out of it. But we give these two chemicals to our plants with water, and of course not all of those chemicals are absorbed by the plant. They also get washed away, and when they get washed away, that water becomes very polluted. And in Uzbekistan, what we do, we just take that water and put it back into the rivers. So, which means we take the clean water from river, we use it, we make it dirty with pesticides and agriculture nutritions, and then we give it back to what? To the river again. So the amount of river water that is needed in order to make our polluted water diluted to the extent that it becomes clean enough for environment to receive it is called gray water, basically. Yes. So yeah, so this is, and then once we calculate the blue water, the green water, and the gray water, uh, the sum of all of these waters give us the whole water footprint. And right now I gave you example of cotton, but it can be done with all of the products. For example, let's say a piece of paper, right? The blue water, um, so the blue water could be the water that was given to the tree in order to raise that cellulose, right? And also the blue water could be the water that we used in the plant in order to produce this paper. The green water could be the water inside of the soil that was used to raise the tree, and the gray water would be the water needed to dilute the polluted wastewater of paper making plants. Yes. So again, you can do it a lot with all of the examples, and we can speak hours and hours about this topic, but rather than speaking, let's see some examples. So can I? So let's see some of the examples. I'm gonna do this in. Okay. So there is this very good website called waterfootprint.org, and it basically calculates the water footprint of all products in just that way that I just described. And so, for example, here you can see how much water do we use in order to raise a kilogram, a liter, a gram of water. Oh, and here we have the cotton. For example, here you can see cotton, and here you can see that the global average water footprint is 2,495 liters in order to produce a shirt of 250 grams. Yes, a shirt is, I guess, a t-shirt, like these upper clothes, right? And here it is. This is the green water, the water that was still in the ground, and then this is the blue water, and then this is the gray water. And for example, here you can read. Yes, I would very much suggest you to read, and you can see. For example, it describes the water footprint, meaning how much water do we spend in order to raise the cotton in different countries. For example, in China, in order to raise 1 kilo of cotton, you spend 6,000 liters. In US, this number is a little higher. It's 8,100. In Pakistan, it's 9,600. In India, oh my god, in India it's 22,500. In Uzbekistan, it's 9,200. We're still good, but we're not that good, right? You see that, for example, there's China that can raise the cotton spending only 6,000 liters. We can reach that level too, and we should reach that level, right? Yes, because cotton is quite a profitable product. Although the whole world needs cotton, it's not an enemy or I don't know, a virus that we should get rid of. It's a good plant. We should just need to learn how to raise it in a proper way using less water, right? This is just our task, not to abolish it fully. Yeah. Yes. And to run a lot of products actually. For example, we have tomatoes, and you can see that in order to raise a kilo of tomato, we just spent 214 liters. It's around how much? So the global average was, I guess, around 10,000 liters per kilo of cotton. So it's around 5 times less than the cotton. right, than the kilo of cotton. A kilo of tomatoes is 5 times less than the kilo of cotton. But what about the price, right? Let's ask Gemini. What is the global average price of kilo of cotton and kilo of tomatoes? It's interesting. I didn't research it yet. For cotton is 135. For tomatoes, from 135 to 145. For tomatoes is 160, from 08 to 160. So still we can see that for tomatoes we spend less water, but we get around the same amount of profit that we get for cotton, for which we spend way more water, right? So you could say to Uzbekistan, hey Uzbekistan, maybe you are better off raising more tomatoes than cotton. You get the same amount of money but use less water, right? You could say that. Or, for example, we have apples, but for apples we already use around 822 liters. Then we have bananas, but bananas we can't raise. Oh my god, in order to raise a kilo of meat, we spend 15,415 liters. A beer, oh, okay, a cabbage, still a lot, 5,000. So, oh, we have oranges, they use less water. We have olives, they use a lot. We have peach, 910, right? So, yes, help yourself, go to this website. I could sit here for maybe hours looking at how much water do we spend for every product, and I don't know, maybe make a list of recommendations for the Ministry of Agriculture. Hey people, I know which crop you should raise, this crop, right? So yes. So, and it could be your homework, right? So this is quite interesting place to visit. And it's a good place to visit because here you can see that there are products for which we could use less water but get the same amount of profit or even more, right? Or even more. But why Uzbekistan does not do it? That's a good question. That's a good question. And I don't really know the answer to this question. I can only guess why Uzbekistan doesn't do it, and mostly it's because, well, when you already have the system that is so well suited for one type of crop, it's so hard to switch to the other crop, and there are a lot of people who are making big money out of cotton, and the land is so suitable for cotton. The farmers already are very much knowledgeable about how to raise the cotton and so on and so forth, that just switching to tomatoes is easy to say but hard to do, right? So although a simple math shows that this is quite a good way, it might not be that easy in practice, right? But it doesn't mean that we should not do it. It means that there is a big reason to shift from cotton to some other cultures. It's not that easy, but it should be done. And okay, so why did we do this lecture, and why did we cover all of these topics, and why do we need this all? Why it matters? We are again coming to this topic, why it matters. And here I would like to discuss more the story of cotton with you. I think it's an interesting story. It's interesting to dive into this story. And oh my god, someone is so much texting to me. Sorry for that, guys. Yes. So, yeah. So let's discuss cotton today. And basically, just right from the beginning, I put this beautiful picture um, of the paint style in Pakhtakor metro station in Tashkent. But basically, what I wanted to say is that Uzbekistan wasn't always a place for cotton. Yeah, we raised it around like 2 centuries ago. We raised cotton still, but it wasn't a main culture, main plant culture. We used it only in the amount that was enough for us, not that much as it is right now. Yes, and basically it wasn't a sign of our culture. But what happened later is that political and economical forces made cotton so much important that it got absorbed even into our culture. Right now we have the cotton in our piyale, in our choinak, in our national clothes, in even in our national places, right? It already became a sign of our culture, but it wasn't like this all the time. It wasn't. So, let's talk about the story of cotton. And yes, so let's talk about the story. So, when did it begin? When did we become so much obsessive with cotton? And it all started in 1860s, from 1860s to 1970s. And if you're wondering where I look is on my phone because so many dates and names, I will be peeking into my phone in order to tell this to you. So from 1860s, around from 1860s to 1970s, America had its Civil War. So if you remember in North America, like the bigger part of American continent, the slavery of black people was very, very, very popular, right? It was very popular, and basically that no that America, the USA that we know today, was divided into two parts, into North and South part. The North was more industrialized, it was more modern, if you can say so, and the southern part it was more agriculture based part. It were the states of Texas and so on and so forth, and they usually made a huge profit on cotton, and they used these people, the African slaves brought from Africa, in order to raise cotton and other plants. Yes, but what happened is from 1860s to 1917s, people in North looked at the way black people live in South and they said, "Oh, that's horrible. Slavery is horrible. And even those black people should not be slaves. They should be given freedom." And they said to South, "Hey South, if you don't make those black people free, we're gonna go with war. We're going to go with war." And the South answered, "Oh, there is no way I'm gonna give them freedom, because if I give them freedom, who is going to work in my plantations?" And then there was a war. And of course, when war happens, the business, the industry, the economy, everything stops, and all those plantations that were delivering cotton to the whole world, they stopped their work because people were busy with war. And what happened is that the clients of this cotton were left with no cotton. And one of the biggest clients of American cotton was Russia, was a Russian empire in those times. There wasn't a Republic of Russia, there was Russian Empire. And a lot of textile fabrics of Russian Empire were left with no cotton. And when there is no raw material, there is no work for fabrics, there is no products, there is no profit, economy is still, and something should be done. And in that time, the ruler of Russian Empire, the Alexander II, had a grandiose plan to invade Central Asia and to use its natural resources in order to turn its uncultivated lands into a big cotton plantations. And from here started the plans to invade Central Asia. Yes. So what happened is that we were invaded, and once we were invaded, a huge irrigation works started in Uzbekistan, and we started to raise a lot of cotton. And basically everything was going well. We were producing a lot of it. So, for example, in 1886, we already produced 13,000 tons. To 1914, around how many years afterwards? Around 28 years after, we produced already 250 tons of cotton. Yes, and already coming to era of Stalin, but even during those times, we still used the exported cotton from other countries. But when Stalin came to rule, came to dominance, what he wanted is a total cotton independence, meaning I don't want to depend on other countries for cotton. I want to raise my own cotton, and I'm gonna use Uzbekistan's territory in order to turn its lands into cotton cultivation plants. And from then on, we started to produce a lot of cotton. And in those times, what happened is that traditional farmers, traditional small families of farmers were wiped, and all small farmers were united into big so we call it how we call it kolkhozy. Yes, so small farms were wiped away and they were united into big kolkhozy. So, and every year there was a um, certain amount of cotton that had to be raised, and for example, one of the results of this political regime was the construction of big Fergana Canal that was literally dug by people in 45 days. They built a very huge plant, a very huge canal, the Fergana Canal. It was dug by hands of people manually, by hands of around 160,000 people. Right now, basically, canals are dug by dynamites or by excavation machines, never by hands of people. But in those times, you can see that around 160,000 of people were forced to go. It was called Hashar. They were forced to go to make a way for Great Fergana Canal in order to raise cotton. Yes. And already during 1940s, we had around 1.38 million tons of cotton. After 10 years, we already reached this number to 2.2 million tons of cotton. It's too much, it's a lot. And one of the results of that, yes, we had this cotton boom. And as a result, oh God, our environmental situation in the country became worse and worse. One of the results is the topic of last lesson, the RLC. Yes. So basically, this was what happened is that yes, in 1970s, from 70 to 80% of Uzbekistan's land was filled with monoculture. Everyone was raising cotton, making money with cotton, working on cotton, so everything was dependent on cotton. And in 1980s, it was the peak record time when we produced 5.6 million tons of cotton. It was even higher than what USA produced. Can you imagine USA, that big USA couldn't produce 5.6 tons of cotton and we did? It was something that we could be proud, but it costed a lot. Costed a lot. Yes, and yeah, so one of the bad sides of it was also this hashar. So a lot of people were forced to go to fields for 3 months. They were taken from their studies, they were taken from their educational places. The teachers were forced to go to cotton plantations to have that cotton. Yes, and yeah, it was pretty bad. The whole nation of Uzbekistan for 3 months couldn't do anything but to collect cotton. So, and then what happened is that the Soviet Union broke up and we became independent. And once we became independent, uh, we could no longer rely just on cotton because of course you can sell cotton, you can make clothes out of cotton, but you cannot eat cotton. And that's why what we did is that we reduced the amount of cotton production in order to have place for, in order to produce food for Uzbek people. But cotton still prevailed. Cotton still prevailed in times of Islam Karimov, for example. And one of the results of this was that we still forced people to go and collect cotton. And the bad side was that we forced children also to go and raise cotton. And in fact, it's illegal. It's called illegal child labor. Children should be fed, they should be educated, they should be given a chance to live a happy life, but instead they were forced to go to cotton plantations and to collect that cotton. And what happened is that the whole world made a boycott against Uzbekistani cotton. Big brands like H&M, Zara, Denim wouldn't buy our cotton just because we used child labor in order to raise it. That's why no one bought it. And what happened is that yes, it happened during 2010. The over 300 major brands, they didn't want it. So after 2017, yes, so after 2017, already the rule in Uzbekistan changes, our president changes, and what happens is that we are no longer forced. For example, I have never been to cotton plantations, and already my niece and nephews that are living in regions, for example, very near to agriculture plantations, they're also not forced to go to cotton plantations, and teachers are also no longer being taken away from their duties to collect cotton. So this is stopped. And right now, so what happened right now is so there is this big organization called ILO. This is International Labour Organization. They already freed Uzbekistan from illegal child labor claims. So which means these brands can now safely buy our products because we are not using forced labor to produce cotton. Yes. So this was a very short peek into the story of this cotton, why we started raising it, and so on and so forth. So there could be a very good question. After Uzbekistan became independent, we had the choice to switch from cotton to something else, right? But why we didn't do that? Because it's hard. Because it's hard. When we became independent, we had to survive on our own, we had to feed our people on our own, and in such times you really need a source of income. You really need a source of money, and the only source of money that Uzbekistan had in those times was cotton. And now you are telling me to get rid of it? Hell no, I'm not gonna do it. And this was what happened. So many years of forced introduction of cotton that happened in Uzbekistan will not be wiped away in just a year, in just a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades. Way more time is needed in order to switch from agricultural, economic to industrial and then human-centered. But I could say we're on a way to do it. We already have the progress. The cotton is being decreased, the amount of cotton is being decreased, we are having diversity in our agriculture. Basically, agriculture is being decreased, we are giving away to other sectors, right? So, to industry, to tourism. So things are getting better. Things are getting better. Yes. But, things are getting better, and now we turn to your homework. And your homework would be, so now we discussed about how we spend the water of Uzbekistan, and your homework would be to look at what kind of products bring good profit to Uzbekistani economics, but at the same time use less amount of water. So calculate the price of liter of water when it was spent on different products. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back to that website, that water footprint website. You're going to search for the amount of water that is spent for various products. Then you're going to search for how much that product costed. And then you're going to calculate the amount of 1 liter of water spent on that product. And then based on that, you can give your recommendations on what could be changed. For example, based on our tomato versus cotton. So, where is cotton? Oh, for example, here is the cotton. And in Uzbekistan, we spent 9,200 liters in order to raise a kilo of cotton, right? So let me open Excel, Google Sheet. So for cotton, so amount of water is equal to 9,200 liters. Yes, and price of 1 kilo of cotton. So let me do just one thing. Is equal to how much? The cotton, so let's take the average 135, 145, so the average would be 1.4. So it's around 1.4 US dollars, right? Which means 1 liter, price of 1 liter of water spent on cotton would be how much? Would be 1.5 divided by 9,200, and this is how much 1 liter of water costs when we're spending it for for cotton. And then we can do the same, but for tomato. For example, amount of water for tomato is, where is tomato? Oh, here. So it's 214, right? 214. And tomato cost us how much? So from 0.8 to 1.6, so that would be around 1.2, the average. So it costs us around the liter of water spent on cotton, no, on tomato. Would cost us $0.005 dollars. So, and the difference is what? The difference is how much? So the 1 liter of water spent on tomatoes bring us 34 times more profit than a liter of water spent on cotton. This is huge. This just shows us that tomatoes are way more attractive to spend water on, right? So basically what you are going to do, you're going to do the same calculations just for different products and give recommendations on what crops could be raised in order to bring more profit. Yes, so that is going to be your homework, and you're going to you can do it either on a piece of paper or in Google Sheet like I did, these calculations, right? So you're going to just film your screen or a piece of paper with your voice in the background. You're going to tell that and this, and you're going to film it, and the video should be submitted to the Google form like yesterday. And this is going to be your homework. Your recommendation on how Uzbekistan should spend its water. Because you learned how Uzbekistan spends it right now. And you know that there is a better way. So with that, I would like to finish the lecture. It's already, I think, yes, it's already 1 hour. So today we talked a lot. Yes, so if you have any questions, you're welcome to give them to me right now. Yes. If you don't have any questions, we can also stop the lecture here. Yes, Charos, please. You can turn on your microphone and give the question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yesterday,
I had a problem to send my homework through Google Classroom. So can I send it through Telegram?
What was the problem?
The file wasn't suitable. I recorded this video from Google Earth, but when I wanted to send it, it didn't work.
Maybe, yes, just send it to me via Telegram then. Yes. I think you have my Telegram. Great. Any more questions?
You are in the group, right?
Yes, I am in the group. You just search Nargis and there will be my account, yes. Maftuna, you wanted to give a question? Anyone else? In the chat? Is there any way to make non-drinkable water drinkable? Yes. It just depends on how dirty or clean the non-drinkable water is. For example, the ocean water is non-drinkable. Also, wastewater is non-drinkable. You can always make it drinkable. For example, Israel, it takes a lot of water and a lot of ocean water. It uses very expensive membrane. So membrane is a technology that treats water and makes the ocean water drinkable. The ocean water is not safe for people to drink because it's very salty and it has other pollutants as well. So what Israel does, it cleans that water from different salts and then people drink it. And it's quite expensive, but Israel doesn't have other choice. Or you also have Singapore, and in Singapore they don't have a natural source of water. So what they do is they take the rainwater, they clean it, and they give it to people to drink. And then the wastewater of people, they also clean it and then they use it to flush the toilets, to wash the dishes, to clean the streets, and so on and so forth. But water is very expensive in Singapore. We, Uzbekistan, very lucky because the water that we have basically is already very clean. The water of Amudarya and Sirdarya in the upper parts, it's very clean because it's coming from mountains. It's very clean. We don't have to do a lot. We can just clean it and it already can be used for drinking or our groundwater as well. Yes. So yes, any water can become drinkable, like literally any water, but it depends on the source of pollution, what is making the water non-drinkable, and then you also look at the price. How expensive will it be to treat that water? Because if the water, for example, in universe, there are astronauts that are going out to the open universe, right? And they need water as well. And what they do is they use 100% recycled water. For example, they go to toilet, they pee, and their pee is being fully treated, and then they drink it again. It's okay. You might say, ooh, it's so bad, but actually, if you treat it very well, it is drinkable as long as it doesn't have the pollutants, as long as it matches the standards, the health standards. It can be consumed by people, and astronauts are doing it because they don't have any other choice. And basically, you, like everyone, also drink their own of someone else's pee. Yes, it's not. We shouldn't laugh at astronauts. We also do that. Just the pee that we drink was not treated by machines, but it was treated by nature. Like you produce this waste. This waste is treated a little bit by human, and then it's discarded to nature. Then what happens is nature cleans it. So the sun evaporates all the water from your pee, the water goes up to clouds, and then it rains in the mountains, and mountains give that water back as Sirdarya and Amudarya to you, and you're saying, oh, what a good water. But actually, a year ago, it could be your or your neighbor's pee, right? And the nature just cleaned it. And it's okay. It's a cycle of water. Yes. Um, any other questions? Great. So nice then. We can stop the lecture here. Thank you to everyone and bye bye. See you.